like when you're doing the shows and you got your couple of people that are there and you're like, fuck it, bro. Y'all are going to be so hyped that you came to this show. When you pull up and you
Yeah,
see me in the World
yeah,
Stadium, like, nah, I saw it when it was just us. Like,
yeah. Nah, and that's the best feeling too, because I think about those shows every time I do a bigger one. Like that last one I did in LA, that was like 1,500 people or some shit. I was like, what the fuck? Like the first show I did in LA, like I headlined it and we threw it ourselves, and there was like 100. We sold out the room, but it was 100-person room, you know. So it's like to do those bigger rooms and think about the earlier ones is crazy, especially when you have that moment with the audience where you kind of acknowledge the people that were there earlier and have seen you perform or whatever, see who's new to you and who's really been around. And I was just talking to somebody about this with Web3 too, because I was trying to explain to someone what the value of an NFT is if you don't care about the actual things that you're holding and
yeah,
the asset itself. I was explaining that like it's still so wildly early for all of this stuff that like the idea is that all of it is going to go up in value as it just gets more widely adopted, regardless of what the individual thing is that you invested in. And then obviously at a certain point, when it does get more widely adopted, you know, your choices will matter more. But right now, it's just like anything you do right now is early, you know, because there's so much potential for
literally.
growth in the whole space. And so I've been doing, especially in Miami, like I've been around a lot of art people this week. I'm out here with a friend of mine who just closed her gallery to switch to like private sale or whatever, but she sells art and knows a lot of works with a lot of emerging artists in New York. Um, and we've just been having these conversations all week because I think a lot of the art people I'm meeting are a little bit resistant to it. And I'm like, yeah, obviously, having a piece of art on your wall that you can look at is beautiful and amazing, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And this is not a substitute for that, but it is something that you can do in addition um, to help those artists and to support those artists and find other ways to engage with them. So it's just been funny having this conversation in the last week because I've been kind of giving people the crash course like every day. Um, yeah, and
I,
not even diving into the music part yet. They're not ready for that conversation.
the music conversation is a whole other piece. I will say though, it's like as far as being early, I think the thing that's happening is a lot of people see Instagram. And when I say that, I mean they see like the revolution of like social media and see like, oh, crazy pictures on your phone. But a lot of people don't even understand what a mobile phone is yet. And so it's this disconnect of having, and I'm using these like older analogies, but it's like you see the internet in 95 and someone's trying to tell you, yo, the internet's going to be crazy because Instagram is going to exist. And you're like, Instagram, like what? Like you can't even wrap your mind around that concept
Yeah,
because the iPhone doesn't exist yet or the mobile phone isn't, the touchscreen phone, like that technology just isn't there yet. So it always kind of blows my mind because that's really what this is. We're like these NFT use cases that we're seeing, it's not what it's going to be like in a couple of years. Like these are the early days and people are still exactly this, trying to figure it out. So trying to judge a space off the prototypes is, it's a little naive, but I think it's like what happens with most things. There's artists that when I first heard them, I'm like, oh, I can't stand this person. And after hearing them 100 times, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they're not that bad. So shit
yeah,
grows on you, man.
yeah. Well, it does, and I think also like you know, if you told anyone today or if you told anyone in 1995 what Instagram was going to be, and told them that they had an opportunity to have a stake in it just by passively participating and being present, not even by just being at the forefront of it, but just by participating and kind of accepting it and learning about it, 99% of people would take that opportunity. And it's crazy to me that people aren't looking at what's happening right now and recognizing how similar it is to the way things have developed over the last 20, 30 years and not seeing this as a second opportunity to hop on early, you know? Um,
I
that's what's
think
really
it's like
wild to me.
people see it.
That's just not clicking for so many people.
It's like everything is obvious in hindsight. Like, oh, if I would have invested in Apple in the '80s, I'd be a billionaire or whatever. Like, there's like a lot of those arguments, and I think it's on us, the people that are seeing the potential of the space, to be having these types of conversations and to be pushing the envelope. Like one of my neighbors, so I'm in downtown Brooklyn and there's a lot of like playwrights and stuff on my block, just a lot of well, I don't want to call them like old jobs, but they're older people who have just been in their careers for longer periods of time. And
Yeah,
one stopped me and saw an Instagram post that I had and asked me about NFTs. And I'm like, yo, like NFTs aren't new. In order for you to wrap your mind around it, like lose the hype, lose the headlines, lose whatever you know about it, and just think about digital ownership and being able to verify that you own something digitally. And they're like, okay, well, why are people paying these crazy high prices for art? And I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's not even think about that, because the easiest way I can explain that is, would you spend $1 million on a Tom Brady collectible card? And they were
right.
like, no. And I'm like, well, that's the case right there. This already exists in your current world. People are already spending exorbitant prices to own things that are of value to them but may mean nothing to you. Because I wouldn't
Exactly.
spend $10 on any NFL trading card, but that's just me.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
Unless you knew what it was worth and were gonna flip it, and then that's where,
a boom.
yeah,
Or if it meant something to me, or if it was like I was just a huge fan and I have this crazy book where I can look back and for any number of reasons I rock with this.
yeah,
So I'm explaining this to her more on the NFT piece, and I'm like, yo, think about your deed, right? And think about the fact that for somebody to verify that the deed that you're sending them is really yours, they have to check however many, like points, we'll call it. There is no way to just say, oh, okay, this PDF that I was emailed is the legitimate PDF that I'm looking for, and this information is unadulterated. But
right,
if your deed was an NFT and you sent it out somewhere, people could look on a blockchain ledger and say, oh, look, this came from the Kings County clerk and this is an official deed. Okay, boom. We're going to
right,
save whatever that manual process or even slowly automated checking process. And that is the big picture stuff with NFTs that, like, I don't know how that would work. I've had people run me proposals of, manual entry to start and then converting and all of that. But either way, it's still, the start of 2022, and that implementation has barely begun yet. And so,
right.
what's that going to look like in 2026 when you go to buy a house and maybe your first deed is an NFT, or your college degree? We know how easy it is to fake a diploma. It's
Facts.
wild to think about the fact that, like, MIT students started getting their degrees on the blockchain. But then it's like, damn, that kind of makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, this came from the official MIT smart contract, and I'm able to verify that this person actually did graduate. Look, here's their name, as
Yeah,
opposed to, oh, let me call the office, let me wait for somebody on hold. Oh, we have to wait for someone else to confirm that this person actually went there. And it's little use cases like that are going to start coming about in everyday life, that's really, really going to get people on board with it, because they won't even know that it's an NFT. Like,
right,
people don't
exactly.
understand TCP/IP protocol, but you know how to use email.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, what people aren't seeing right now, and I'm in looking at music NFT Twitter every day, I'm also not seeing a lot of people draw these parallels in a way that makes sense to someone who has no idea what the fuck is going on. Because that was a very simple way to explain it. You can use the social media apps but not know how the internet works, you know?
Yep.
And I think part of that is on the platforms. I think there's going to be, every music NFT. Speaking specifically to music, like every music NFT platform that's out right now is very very new, and it's going to, with any platform like that, and with any web platform, even in Web 2, it takes a long time to get the UI, and the user experience the way it you want it to be to its final form. And then even we see with apps as big as Facebook and Instagram, they're constantly updating. So it's like, I don't think that we're anywhere close to the final iteration of the way that music, audio, one of one NFTs are minted and distributed and traded. And it's already pretty solid. Like, even looking at things like Catalog and Zora, like they're pretty solid and straightforward if you choose to dive into them. But I think it's going to be a while before those things are really easily onboardable for people who like don't even have a wallet and don't even want to think about what a wallet is and setting that up and what Ethereum is. Um,
I'll
But I
know
do
it's
think that's
starting
going
to
to be a
happen.
massive turning point. Yeah.
I would say, yeah, it definitely will be a massive turning point. I'll know that that's starting to happen when my grandmother owns an NFT. And
Right.
I like I always use her
There
as
you
kind of my
go,
gauge where
good.
she's not completely out of the loop. You know, I think she has like an iPhone 10 right now, so a few years behind. But once technology gets to a point where it has to become part of her everyday life, I'm like, oh, okay, this has really, seeded its way through the masses. Real quick, I want to jump back because I did not do our intro. And I'm so fucking excited to chop with you that I'm no surprise that I went over the intro. But what is up? Welcome to the 7th episode of Money Trees. I'm your host, Khufu, Khufu. And I wanted to tell everyone to grab a pen and paper ahead of us starting to chop up because I knew that you were going to share some gems. But our guest today is extremely talented artist and music executive in the making. My guy Kazi, how are you doing, G?
What's up, man? Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation because I mean, like when you first asked me to do it, it was such a straightforward like, yo, you want to do what we do like once a week anyway on the phone, but on Twitter Spaces, and I was like, shit, yeah, I don't care where we do it, bro. I think these conversations are so exciting, and it's just like every time we talk about this shit, I feel like we could go for another 6 hours. So we'll try to keep it together.
Yeah, right. That's funny. I was saying that same thing. Like, how the hell am I going to have a 30-minute conversation with you? It's like
Bro.
I'll call you and be like, "Yo, I need 5 minutes," and then 50 minutes later, we're like, "Okay."
Yeah, man.
I think that well, we talked a little bit about the, we'll call it like philosophy around Web3 in the space. I think it's really really dope the way that you handle your career and just you live the shit that people talk about. And I say that from an independent
Bar.
perspective of like, yo, you want to see independence? Like literally go look at Kazi's feed. Look at what he posts about, look at the work that he puts in, from the infographics to the content to the video shoots to sharing the ups and downs to being real about, your what you have to do. Like, yo, you show your job. You show when you were running around doing production shit during the city to help supplement income during COVID, where it was like, yo, like this independent shit is not all glitz and glam. And not that people say that it is, but it's like, yo, this is literally, I'm mood boarding. I'm here talking with A&Rs. I'm here trying to talk with PR. I'm here figuring out what's going on with lawyers. Like, you are a one-man show and you share that experience with everyone. And it's super, super ill to watch. I try to help in any way that I can from the outside. But you embody the spirit of Web3 to me. And that is what made me so excited to really get on and just record these conversations. Because I think that we have these great ideas and you're already starting to, actualize them in your career. But people need this blueprint. And it's a thing of like, you agree with me where we don't want to be considered quote unquote better than anyone because we know something they don't. It's like,
Right.
no, we're on the same exact playing field. I'm just outworking you. It's like that's all that is, bro. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't have any secret. There's nothing here. It's exactly what I'm telling you, but I'm just the one putting in the effort. I'm the one that's going to sleep thinking about it, waking up thinking about it. And like you said, living that where it's like, yo, you're down in Miami, amazing place to start your year, right back after we were being degens for Basel, but you're still having those conversations where it's like, yo, it's ill. You're on the beach, and we're like, yo, hold on, let me jump and go talk with Koof and get on this Money Trees episode. And I appreciate that, man, because we know how hard time is to come by in a period where it's a sandbox, right? We keep saying it. It's the wild, wild west. I don't know how many times I've heard people say that. So
Yeah.
every moment you spend is really an opportunity to get ahead. And I think that you spend all of your moments very, very well, I guess to say. Like you put in that time constantly
Thank you,
looking
bro.
to build on your artistry, constantly looking to build on your brand. Kazi has sold his first music NFT through the platform catalogs that we mentioned. Amazing record. Just minted a music video NFT and put out another release as a music NFT. And I think all the records are gas, man. And the way you're going about it, you're touching a few of the different platforms, you're exploring ones that fit with your own ideologies, and really, you have that why figured out. I've talked to a lot of people about like why you need to have the why figured out coming into the space. So we don't
Yeah,
have to touch too much on that. But I will say, just from your perspective, like, what was it like going through that, or seeing the NFT craze start to happen and then deciding to jump in and going ahead and minting and then selling your first pieces?
for sure. That was a crazy intro. Thank you for that. That was super nice. Um, so little background, right? Like I grew up in New York and I've been independent for my whole career. And one of the so I think one of the benefits of growing up in New York is that there's so many artists there. People are bound to succeed, and you can really watch so many success stories unfold. And so much of what I do right now is in terms of like the marketing and the PR and the learning the business and all the stuff that you just touched on is the stuff that I learned directly from studying other artists who were, the generation above me and watching all of that unfold. Um, what I realized after a couple of years of doing that was that at a certain point, you can work yourself as hard as you want and you can do all the creative and you can do you can understand the strategy, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to fund it. And so for me, this was always a financial thing where it's like, I don't, depend on my parents financially. I grew up around, I went to a private school, I had a private education in New York. My mom is a teacher and cares about education a lot. So we were very lucky to have that, but I grew up around a lot of other people who had a whole lot of money that I didn't have. And so I felt I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Whether that's like a healthy thing or not a healthy thing, I think is always a big debate in music. But that was a big part of the beginning of my career and figuring out how I wanted to kind of sculpt it, and how I wanted to move. And so I spent a lot of time kind of just like hourly working and doing mad different day jobs, like you touched on earlier, to try to cover all the expenses of being an independent artist. But I've just realized after a couple of years of doing that it's not the most sustainable thing, and it's there's so many costs associated with breaking a new artist, which is also something that I learned from working at a label, that it's almost impossible to do it as an individual. So when I think the first person that I saw really breaking into that space was either Cooper or my manager, Michael Saw. Shout out to Michael. And just saw the freedom that was attached to those moves that were being made in that space. And I see Cooper say it all the time now, and I think that's a really good way to put it. The freedom of being able to release things and create things on your own schedule, is a really key point for me. And I don't know if I think you know me at the time, but there was a point earlier in the year where Daniel Ek, one of the founders of Spotify, and I think is the current CEO still, basically said, "Hey, if artists want to get paid more for their streams, they should just put out more music and put it out more frequently." And I remember being so frustrated seeing that and being like, "Yo, this like putting the responsibility on artists, to get paid a fair wage for their work is insane, but also." Specifically, that approach was so frustrating to me because it shows such a disconnect between a platform like Spotify and the creative community that powers it, um, and just such a lack of understanding of what that creative process actually looks like for almost all of us. So, I think, in short, the watching Cooper talk about it and watching my manager Michael talk about it and seeing how freeing it was for artists who were really active in the space, um, was a huge part of it. And the kind of B part of it was seeing how much easier it was in the space for real supporters of an artist to support them in more ways than there were even just like a couple months ago. Partly in selling NFTs, but also partly through being able to offer so much other utility through, NFTs or through props or any other tokenized experiences that you can. Sorry, give me 1 second.
No, you're good. You're good. Out at
Run
Soho
through.
Beach House. I gotta
Oh
I
yeah,
gotta name
absolutely.
drop all you can't.
Run around.
My man
Um,
Kazi is filming live. Whoa, recording. Keep going. Keep going. My bad, G.
no, you're good. I said that. Yeah, no, I think just the reward.
Oh, we stepped out
So
and
long in
lost
music.
you. If you can, so Kaz, run that back. Lost you after you said you stepped out. Still losing you. Still getting rugged. While we attempt to reconnect with young Kazi, he hit on some really, really ill points in there. Talking on freedom and what Web3, like, he's gone. We lost him completely. All right. Our first disconnect momentous. 7 episodes in. I'm not too upset at that, honestly. I feel like it could have happened sooner and been worse. Um, oh, Kazi is back. Okay. Boom. Invite to co-host. Requested. How do I let you up?
Um, yeah, I heard you talking before, but I couldn't speak. You were saying this is the first one to disconnect.
Yeah. No, but it's all good. I was saying I was just trying to pick up from where you were saying you stepped out. That was where we lost you. Was
Got
when
you.
you said, "Oh, you had to step out." But yeah, just you were summing up your experience. Yo, you back?
Yeah, yeah, I think we're good.
That is one thing I will say. Kazi being in Miami, like you pretty much got to be on Wi-Fi. I felt like everywhere in South Beach had two signals or two signal bars for
I mean,
AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. Like the service is
I
just
didn't even
not
leave.
good.
Yeah, I didn't even leave the building. I just went from one room to another room, but I guess that was the wrong rooms. So we're good. But yeah, no, I think
Wherever
just
you're at now, you are good.
okay. It's cool. I'm gonna stay in this hallway. Um, right in front. I'm standing in the hallway
I
in
like the
front of
reverb.
this. Yeah, 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 in front of the schedule for all the nightlife stuff that's happening here. And there's just a big ass picture of Walshy Fire from Major Lazer in front of me, so I'm gonna focus on that. But no, I think honestly the Spotify thing pissed me off, and Michael started putting me onto Web3 like right around the same time, and then it was the perfect timing of and the perfect solution I was frustrated about for a very long time. So the main thing for me was just realizing that there were only so many ways for artists to support. I mean, for fans to support an artist before, it was literally only buy merch or like come to a show or get real creative with a crowdfund. And the problem with crowdfunds for the longest time is that they were essentially just like charity. I don't think people really do crowdfunds for the benefits that are connected to them for the most part. You can, but it's like I think the idea of any individual being able to invest in an artist rather than just donate to an artist is a game changer. And I don't know which is weird because there obviously were ways to do that before Web3, but it just feels more streamlined now. Even though there's
The perception is different. And
the perception is different, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out why. Have you thought about this?
yeah, I would say it's it's funny, right? If you think about online shopping, if you're going to buy something that's $35, if you saw it and it was 34.99 plus free shipping, and you saw the exact same thing for 29.99 but $5 shipping, that $5 shipping one, like you wouldn't be inclined to go for that because you feel like you're paying extra, or it's like just this weird kind of psychological barrier, as opposed to even though the 34.99 is the exact same price, oh, shipping is free. And so
Facts.
now you start to present it differently, and it changes that perception. Whereas like you look at De La, and De La had the largest music Kickstarter crowd, or the largest music crowdfund that I'm aware of, for any artist, and that we did that before NFTs. You know what I mean? That was to lead up to and the Anonymous Nobody album, which was what 5 6 years ago at this point, and it didn't require any tokenomics. Raised 3/4 of a mil, so it's not like it was a small number, and that worked. And what did we do? We added utility. We said, oh, you get signed notebooks, or you get merch, or you get signed vinyls. And it's all concepts that are just now being applied in this new Web3 space. But again, none of it is new concepts. It's just, to me, it's actually going back damn near old school because people are like, oh, why does Bitcoin have value? And it was like, why does the dollar have value? Why do rocks have value? Why did people trade rocks for cows? It was all just on
Right.
whatever you could convince somebody else it was worth. And I hear a lot about in NFTs like the greater fool theory, which is like, oh, some people are just buying something expecting there to be a greater fool out there that will pay them more for the
Or
NFT. And that's where a lot of the hate comes in, because it's like, oh, you're just buying this picture of whatever because you're trying to have this one come up. And I think that that's only one piece of it, and people are too focused on that one piece of it. To what you were just talking about earlier with utility, um, I'm going to ask on air, and feel free to say no. But can we talk about the one project with
like the
Kazi
branding
World
of
or
it, or
nah?
just like the branding of it, or just the concept of it. Yeah, we can. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we talk about utility, right? And part of me wanting to do money trees was so moments like this were stamped, right? It's like, cool, we got some people here in the Twitter space that are hearing it live. You know, I'm gonna take the audio and then post it everywhere. And then when these ideas start to materialize, people are gonna be like, oh shit, okay, these aren't overnight successes. This is
Right.
literally the product of months, if not years of work and tons of different iterations and tons of different conversations to get it to the point where you're now seeing it. Trying to
Yeah.
demystify the whole thing. Um, and I do want to talk on the Kazi World piece, but I want to touch back on one last thing with you and your NFT sales, where just because you put your music up as an NFT, the work did not stop there. You still were promoting heavy. You still were spending a lot of time explaining to people what NFTs were and getting them to understand why you were then selling it as an NFT. I think
Right.
that's another thing for artists is like, you can't just come into the space and say, "Oh, look, I minted this. Now it's worth this price." Even if you feel that it's worth it, you have to convince somebody else that it is worth it. And
Right.
that may be through your words, that may be through your story, that may be through just the art itself. You may be one of the greatest artists ever, and you just upload a picture, you don't talk to anyone, you have no relationships, nothing, and it sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is the exception. The majority of people will have to put in work in some form or fashion. Going back to this Kazi world idea, and we were talking about utility, and we're talking about creating an NFT that doesn't necessarily require the value of it, the monetary value of it to go up. Where it's
Yeah.
like, Kazi has this super ill brand that he's building, and the idea is Kazi World. And we were talking about like, yo, what could NFTs look like in Kazi World? And he mentioned the idea. He's like, well, what about passports? He's like, what can we do with passports? And he said that, and it was like fucking Times Square lit up in my head. Like, forget a single
It's
light bulb.
crazy.
Like, it was tens or hundreds of millions of little LEDs.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, Kazi is super young, super talented. He has this world, Kazi World. Imagine if everyone that wanted to be a fan of Kazi or was a fan of Kazi or wanted to start collecting memorabilia from Kazi World had a passport. And now you get this NFT passport. And every single time that you buy an NFT from Kazi, or you go to one of his shows, or you buy a piece of merch, your passport gets stamped. And now you start having this passport that has a stamp of all these interactions that you've had in Kazi World. And it starts to become your like memorabilia from this world. And now it's like, oh shit, you actually have a passport for Kazi World that shows all the places you've gone and traveled with this artist. Now, I don't know what the resale value of that is, because I don't think that that should be the focus. I think as an experience, that is insane. Like, to me, that is one of the coolest things. Like, I immediately was like, damn, I want one of these. I need a Kazi World passport so I can say, oh yeah, I bought the real ones NFT when it was on Create Safe. Or it's like, nah, I got the real ones one of one that was on catalog. Or like, yo, I pulled up to the Kazi party in March that ended up having a guest appearance from Mia Gladstone and all these other people. And then it's like, wow, I was there for that moment. Or then it's
Yeah,
like, damn, Kazi is headlining Coachella. I have my Kazi passport from when I was at his first show. I was stamped and I was there. That is a different level of engagement, of interaction. And yes, that's something that's, fan clubs, street teams, all of that has existed prior to NFTs, but it's never been so easily manageable. And that's all we're getting at here when we talk NFTs, and why, at least I know people like me and Kazi are so excited about it, is we get to start thinking in ways that just weren't feasible before. There wasn't a way for that passport to be verifiable and tracked and
exactly.
done at scale. And now it's like, yo, I told Kaz, what you got to do is lean into, he has a super ill clothing brand that he's not even developing. He's developing, but it's out and it's ill. And your attention to detail is fire. So you start designing a passport that actually becomes a physical passport, and it becomes a thing of like, yo, maybe it's set up like it's a little tablet or like a Kindle or a Nook, and you send these out to people. They pay for them, and their NFTs are displayed, and it's Kazi specific on this particular passport. But now it's like, yo, you got Kazi World, you got your passport. And what if Kazi's like, yo, anyone with a physical Kazi World passport, anytime you come to a show, if you have this stamp, you just show it at the gate and now that's your ticket. Or you start sending tickets directly to people to write to their passport. And again,
Yeah,
you could send tickets through email, you could do whatever, but that interaction is different. That perception starts to feel a lot different. And it's just like, damn, oh, okay, like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. You start creating people that want to be in this, that want to have the most decorated Kazi World passport, that want to say they are the most traveled in it, that want to say they have never missed anything. And when you have a 15-year career, you give fans the opportunity to really grow with you and to really experience things in a way that, like, I was saying it the other day, I wish I still had my CD cases from my first two albums, where I could
oh,
look back at the liner notes and see that. But I didn't, and there wasn't even a way to really collect it digitally. And iTunes kind of fucked up the whole digital game anyway, because buying music isn't really a thing anymore. But even when it was, Apple took 30% of that, and they told you. I mean, you could change the price kind of, but for the most part, they determined the price. Like, it was 99 cents for a song. And going against that grain, not that it couldn't work, but it was just a lot more difficult than it is. And again, it just becomes that perception thing that we said earlier. Because you look at someone like Nip, and Nip smoked it where he did I've talked about his projects for sure. Like, he would have killed Web3, but he was already in the mindset of, my value is what I say it is. And there are people who are willing to give me what it is that I'm worth.
that is very,
And
very important, and that's something I've been talking
yes.
about a lot recently. Is like, I think a lot of people who are getting into Web3, especially people who are creating NFTs, are doing it to try to come up really quickly. And what I've been trying to explain to people is that the long game here is reestablishing the value of the music or the art, whatever it is that you make. And for me, I had I minted my Khufu said this earlier, but I minted my first one-of-one audio NFT on a platform called Catalog a couple months ago with the reserve price of 1 ETH. Had no idea that was going to sell. Didn't even really expect it to in the first few months, but I wanted to do it just to establish, hey, this is what a one-of-one audio NFT from me is worth. And if no one buys it for a year, fine. But that's my minimum. The same way that my feature price and my show fee and everything are set. Um, and I'm seeing a lot of people get into space and be frustrated that things aren't selling and thinking, maybe should I mark this down? Should I cancel my auction? Blah, blah, blah. And I really think that it's the most important thing here is to establish this is what the art is worth and just to stand on that for as long as possible. Um, the reason I say that is because this is one of the only spaces in music or in art in general where we've been able to determine that on our own now that we're kind of just like at the mercy of streaming platforms like Spotify or even like YouTube. Um, so that's something I've been trying to impress upon people a lot. And then that's usually where utility comes into the conversation because it's like, okay, well, if it's worth that, how do you justify that? Second key thing in terms of utility is obviously a big part of music NFTs is having a creator share so that you do make money off the secondary market, which is great. But I also think that there's really something to be said for creating an NFT that's worth holding. That's not intended to be flipped, and if it is flipped, it's for a different reason, and you're not buying these NFTs with the intention of flipping them later on. Great example is Frank Dukes, amazing super producers, worked with Drake, The Weeknd, everybody. Um, just started this project called The Ghost of Frank Dukes, and this is his NFT project. And they had I forget what the number was, but they did like their first public mint a couple weeks ago in December, and didn't sell out. But no one is even trying to resell them right now because the utilities that are for a producer or for an artist and a songwriter, the utilities that are attached to this NFT that we now all hold are so much more valuable than trying to flip this thing because we're now connected to this huge producer who's creating all these sick opportunities for artists, writers, producers to collaborate with him, collaborate with other people in his network, have access to samples that he's created in a private library that's not open to the public and things like that. So that's really where I see, although obviously there's like short term income from flipping NFTs, I really think that that's where the long term value is going to be. So for me personally, with the passport thing, I think the reason that that idea or that phrase sparked so many ideas for us when we first came up with it was that it gives you a framework and a structure to put all of those utilities inside and give them a way to exist that's tangible for people to really understand. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was probably the most exciting thing for us when we came up with that. No,
That was definitely it. It became that it's that story though, and that's what we always talk about. Where a lot of this stuff and people that I think that's part of the whole demystifying is there aren't a lot of huge differences in what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of great music out there. There's a lot of great art that just does not get the attention that it deserves. But a lot of times you can pinpoint why that didn't happen. And it becomes little things like, oh, the marketing angle didn't really connect, or the story wasn't presented correctly, or the way that the artist saw it in their head wasn't the way that fans were able to connect with it. And these little kind of breaks in the chain can prevent things from becoming huge successes. And on the flip side, little things like the Kazi World Passport, where just from the fact of 1 to 1, okay, Kazi World and Passport, the fact that you already associate traveling and going around the world with, having a passport and needing to do that. Oh,
be
it's
in
a
Miami right
pandemic.
now.
Wow, I'm locked down. I actually can't go. You're like, it's a pandemic? No, sir, not I.
It's a
Um,
pandemic, my boy.
but it just that just that experience layer changes it for people. And I think that it's underrated. It's like you'd be surprised how well executed story elements can take up an artist experience and take a project to the next level. Like we have an artist, Tyler, who dropped the record, and the record is incredible. But the record came out in October of 2019. And no, I won't say nobody, like it got a few, like tens of thousands of streams, and it was cool. We sent it to all our people, did all the things that we normally do, and the reaction was what it was. People saw the music video, and I mean, it sent them over the top. And that's another story to go look at, not to like take the shine away from your piece, but it's just a very direct example of like sometimes you have to feed it in a certain way. And a lot of times, especially in our day and age, we don't realize or we don't remember how long records used to take to break. Like a record would come out and it wouldn't be popping for 9 months, sometimes to 2 years later from the release date. And even when we look at our stars right now, like Truth Hurts with Lizzo, that record was out 2 years before it blew up. It's
Man,
not going to be an instant thing. You have to put in the work. You have to figure out what is your narrative that's going to help people connect with you. People talk about community all the time in this space. It's like, what does that actually mean to be a part of a community? Are you contributing? Are you really bringing value to the people here? Are you uplifting the people that are in the space and trying to help them get further along? If you are doing these things and putting in the work, we are all so early that you will be rewarded. I talk about the WAGMI and the whole we're all going to make it mindset. And I don't have an issue with it, but I do at the same time because I think people are leaving out the fact that everyone that puts in the work will make it. And I believe that because I think that a lot of people are going to be here and not put in the work. And just from that sheer process of elimination, it's like time, having money in the market. If you just let your money sit from 2000 to 2020, you would have made money on most major investments. And so it becomes a thing of like the people that are just having the conversations that are trying to find their way in the space that put in the work, they will make it. And all of this I see in you on the daily, Kazi. And that is why I'm so excited. One, that you came on the show and we got to document some of this, but also just to keep watching your journey where it's like it's exciting, man. Like I don't want to drown it in hyperbole, but you really do embody that. You really do put in the work. You really do step up for all genders, all ethnicities. Like representation is a real thing for you. And it's not something that you're trying to practice or trying to learn how to do, even as a person of mixed heritage. And I think that all of these kind of elements make you who you are. And it's a foregone conclusion you'll succeed in this space, man.
Thank you, bro. I mean, I think so. One of the things I was just talking to Michael, my manager, about the other day is just that like it's really easy if you're not around people who are in the space to start to feel like you're losing your shit because it's the kind of thing where it's like it's so groundbreaking and the shit is going to be so wildly world changing, but it's like so many people just aren't seeing it yet. And I think if you're not surrounding yourself with people who are also in this mindset and are also really trying to learn and share ideas in an openly exchanged way, it's really easy to just like feel isolated. And so I feel very lucky to have people like him and like you around that we can have these conversations with all the time. And I think it's dope that you're moving that conversation literally into the space too, because I'm not seeing a lot of that happening. And I think that every one of these little chats is going to end up being a major part of history. So I think it's so dope that you're doing this. I'm very grateful to be able to do this with you all the time. And also to do it on this forum.
My G, man, that is love. You are at Soho Beach House, as I probably have mentioned for the 35th time. A little jealous. It's cold as hell here in the city. I'm gonna let you jump, but before I let you go, I want to thank you for coming on. All the great sentiment that I said. Very excited to see many of these things materialize. I cannot wait to have my first Kazi World passport. That is just like that's going to be ill. I have a thing where I ask everyone what's their seed phrase. And the seed phrase, if you were to sum up a lot of what we talked about today, or just your kind of philosophy, your motto on the seeds that we planted today, or the seeds that you're just planting in your Web3 career, what would that seed phrase be?
So I have one that I live by, and it's not mine, but it's by another creator who's a good friend of mine, who I will take this opportunity to shout out. Do you know Ant Blue Jr., Stony Blue? He's a
Stony Blue. No. I know Tangina Stone, whose Instagram name is Stone Blue.
Okay, this is
But
so confusing all the time. I don't know who that person is, but I see that person's Instagram on a regular basis, and I always think it's my boy. But
oh,
Ant
that's
Blue,
funny. Now Tangina's ill. She's a really ill songwriter and artist.
yeah.
But yeah, my fault. What were you saying?
Fuck, see, that's my thing though, right? Like, I was just fine not knowing who that person was and being like, oh, I know the real Stony Blue. But now that it's somebody you fuck with, now I gotta figure out how to let them coexist in my world. I don't know how I feel about that. But nah, my boy Stony Blue, aka Ant Blue Jr. He's a DJ, producer, photographer, animator, visual artist, like one of those, just does it all. And his brand, record label, whatever umbrella company for everything he does is called DIY, and it stands for Believe in Yourself, Do It Yourself. And it's funny because I feel like there's like, as I think most independent artists pretty much believe in that phrase and just live by that completely. And I think you kind of have to just like blindly jump into an industry like this and just like hope this shit works out. You kind of have to tell yourself that you know it will, and do so many things on your own, like we talked about at the beginning of this chat. And I hadn't heard someone put it as concisely as he did until I saw him start using that phrase and start using that as his branding and everything. And I think that I've seen that catch on throughout New York since he started. And I think that I love it partly because it just embodies my mentality, but also partly because I think it embodies the spirit of New York too. Um, and it's that mentality is what has brought me and a lot of the people I care about and work with together. So um, I think if I were to pick one, that's what it is right now. We're gonna see. It's either that or just like let's get this bread.
Let's get this bread is the everyday motto. Yo, believe in yourself, do it yourself. Nah, the way you
Yeah.
explained it, the story behind it, that is a seed phrase. That is a seed
Or
phrase to carry through in Web3. I know I keep cutting you off, Cos. My bad. What are you gonna say?
or fucking we ball. I don't know. There's so many, bro.
Nah, man, you hit it. You hit it. Don't look. Believe in yourself. You came through with the first one. The first one you started with, that was the one right there. Believe in yourself. Do it yourself.
That's it.
We got a really ill Kazi Money Tree 7 note. What am I setting that reserve price at?
Shit, 7,000 set not playing.
Bro, no, keep it. Stand on it. Are you kidding
Nah,
me? What? Look, they gonna see going through the motions go platinum and be like, wait a second, there's a Kazi NFT that's uncollected. Where? I
let's
need
do
that.
so 7 is my number. It's my number because my birthday is July 7th, 7/7. So I think should we go 77 Eve?
77 ETH?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's
Let's
go.
do it. 7-7.
Oh yeah.
Bruh, this is I cannot wait. And on the 7th episode, we're gonna come back sooner than we think. Sooner than we fucking think and be like, hey yo, hey yo.
Should we do it again like a year? I was gonna say a year, but even like 6 months from now, we might have another conversation to have. I don't know. We're gonna see.
Oh yeah, bro. I mean, these are 4 days a week for the foreseeable. So we'll see, man.
You
Plenty
doing these
plenty
four
more to
days a
talk
week?
about. We literally Oh yeah, Monday through Thursday.
Jesus, that's so much Web3, bro.
Well, I mean, yo, literally yesterday, me and Imani talked Web3 for like 6 minutes, and the rest of it was just New Year plans and other ish.